After her meetings with the priest, a nun notices that her belly keeps growing. And no one can believe what a nun was doing with the priest when they are caught on camera in the convent. In the heart of the only hospital in a small town, under the cold, sterile light of the ultrasound room, Sister Claire lay motionless on the gurney, with expectation and fear intertwined in her heart. The doctors, figures in white coats who moved with an almost mechanical efficiency, were now immobilized, with expressions of bewilderment and surprise. Muttered one of the doctors, staring at the screen. "Sister Claire, how did this happen?" The room, normally a place of routine discoveries and diagnoses, had been transformed into a stage of mystery. The nun, despite not understanding the images before her, could sense the gravity of the situation. Her heart beat wildly, echoing the irregular rhythm of the uncertainty that consumed her because she didn't want to be kicked out from the convent. "What is it? What's wrong? Please, talk to me," the woman begged, her trembling voice breaking the oppressive silence. One of the doctors, older and with the features of someone who carried the weight of countless stories, turned to her, his eyes revealing a mixture of concern and incredulity. "We're still trying to understand. You're a nun." Before we continue, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and click the notification bell for more amazing stories. "This wasn't supposed to happen," he said, choosing his words carefully, as if each one carried the weight of a diagnosis that could change that woman's life forever. Outside, the other sisters and novices waited apprehensively for the results. "I knew something was wrong," commented one of them. "It was obvious the whole time, but some people still refuse to admit the truth," another muttered. Confusion deepened in Sister Claire's heart. She knew that her life, dedicated to faith and service in the convent, was far from the mysteries and complications of the outside world. And yet, there she was, at the center of a problem that the woman had created for herself, and which contradicted the very nature of her vocation. "You'll have to come back again, Claire. Your case is, well, very specific," said the doctor. Anxiety took hold of her as she got up and left the room. The girl was ashamed and afraid. She was gently led out of the room, leaving behind the doctors immersed in a deep discussion and the other nuns curious about the outcome of the story. But what happened? How could a nun be in that situation? Well, to better understand the story, we need to tell you that the nun had a close friendship with the priest, Father John, a handsome young man of about 35. The two had known each other since childhood and were close friends. Very close. The affection between Sister Claire and the priest was visible to everyone in the convent and beyond. Their frequent walks through the gardens, where they talked and shared moments of deep reflection, were witness to a connection that transcended a common friendship. The man, with his gentle and encouraging presence, was a constant figure in the convent, always available to offer spiritual and emotional support, not just to the woman, but to the entire religious community. However, the frequency of their meetings and the intimacy of their friendship did not go unnoticed by the other nuns and novices, who began to whisper among themselves. "Did you see how close they were at the service today?" whispered one of the younger girls, who kept an eye on the two of them laughing at the end of the service. "Yes, and that's not the first time. I think they are." "Oh, never mind," replied another one, her voice like a whisper laden with innuendo and curiosity. Some of the sisters, carried away by imagination and rumor, began to speculate about the nature of their relationship. Could it be that their friendship has taken a different turn? They insinuated while weaving unfounded stories that suggested a forbidden love. We can never be too sure. After all, they've known each other for such a long time, right? The religious community began to get agitated by those assumptions. The older sisters, The guardians of the congregation's values and morals also kept an eye on Sister Clare and Father John. Things got even worse when a novice, who was suffering from insomnia, saw the nuns sneaking out at night to meet the priest. Under the cover of darkness, the two left the convent, venturing into secret meetings that defied the norms of their vocation. The story quickly spread like wildfire in a dry field, and with each rumor, details and speculations were added that made the other nuns even more suspicious. The older sisters received the news with a mixture of shock and disapproval, while the younger ones couldn't hide a certain fascination with the unexpected development of their story. This is unbelievable. How could Sister Clare, so dedicated and respectable, let herself be led astray from the ways of the church like that? They asked each other, their words full of disappointment and disapproval. The situation, fueled by this single observation and the stories that derived from it, set the stage for developments that would profoundly affect both of their lives. What had begun as a sincere and deep friendship was now under the microscope of the church community. Their every step was analyzed through the prism of other people's judgment. The narrative of secret and forbidden meetings, although far from the reality of their relationship, began to take on a form of its own, transforming the community's perception of Sister Clare and Father John in a way that neither of them could have imagined. But as the saying goes, nothing can be so bad that it can't get worse. One day, Sister Clare's belly began to grow in a way that didn't go unnoticed by the attentive and critical eyes of the other nuns in the convent. Panic quickly set in among the sacred walls as the murmurs turned into vicious conversations. Now, based on the evidence they had speculated about so much, they won't admit it, but she's pregnant, commented one of the novices with certainty as she watched the young woman cross the cloister, her hand instinctively resting on her belly, which was now showing a suspicious curve. Another added, with a smile that barely disguised the pleasure she felt at the scandal. And we all know who the father is, don't we? Come on, people, we're not stupid. Father John and Sister Clare are always together. Whenever questioned, the nun defended herself with the same explanation, her voice shaking with indignation and a mixture of hesitation. Father John and I are just friends. We go out to do things in the neighboring towns, to visit the poor and bring the word of God. But the belief in her innocence and the purity of her intentions no longer found fertile ground in the hearts of the sisters and the community. When the situation became absurd, the older nuns, in an act of desperation and to preserve the morality of the convent, tried to prevent the girl from seeing the priest. You can't see him anymore, Sister Clare. You'll be punished if you do. It's for your own good and to preserve our reputation, they said, with an authority that could not be challenged. But the young woman shouted angrily, "That's absurd. Nobody can prove anything because there's nothing to prove," she retorted, her indignation making her voice echo through the halls of the convent. The religious community, including the bishops and the faithful of the nearby village, were convinced that she was pregnant. After all, her belly was already a considerable size. Under mounting pressure and the desire to clear up the speculation once and for all, the church took a drastic decision. Sister Clare was to have an ultrasound. That's nonsense. For God's sake, Father John is just a friend. I can't believe you would think so little of me, the nun repeated. But her excuses sounded weaker and weaker in the face of the avalanche of evidence and accusatory stares. And since she didn't want to have the ultrasound, the sister, in a desperate move to find concrete evidence to support the allegations, came up with the idea of checking the convent's security cameras. We'll just have to prove it then, and then she won't be able to deny the truth anymore. The convent, with its size and wealth, was well equipped with cameras at strategic points for the safety of all the women, including the kitchen, where Sister Claire and Father John spent a lot of their time together and alone. The moment of truth arrived when everyone gathered to watch the recordings, their hearts pounding in a mixture of anticipation and fear. The nuns, the clergy, and a few select members of the community held their breath as the recordings began to appear on the screen. And what they saw left everyone in shock. Nobody could believe that it had happened. The tension in the room was almost tangible. The nuns and the others waited with high expectations for some irrefutable proof that would confirm the rumors that had been circulating voraciously throughout the convent and the town. After all, they needed to put an end to that story. However, what the recordings revealed was something completely unexpected. In the recordings, Sister Claire and Father John appeared in the convent's kitchen, where they liked to talk, surrounded by an atmosphere of joy and friendship. The man with a genuine smile exclaimed, "Since you couldn't come with me this weekend, I've brought you the presents they gave me in the village." His hands carefully unwrapped the packages, revealing typical foods that he shared with the young woman, both laughing and telling stories about their experiences. "You should have seen the children's faces when I gave them the toys we brought." "It was magical," Father John said, his eyes shining with the reflection of happy memories. The nun, for her part, responded with an equally warmth in her voice, although she was a little sad that she hadn't taken part in the action. "I really wanted to go, but we had to welcome the new girls." So, the scene, far from revealing a forbidden romance, showed two friends enjoying a meal together. A moment of genuine companionship, and nothing more. The conversation flowed freely, touching on plans for future church missions and the importance of their friendship in the context of their service to the community. The nuns watching the recordings exchanged confused and surprised looks. "Really? But that doesn't prove anything. They're just eating together." One of the younger nuns questioned with clear disappointment in her voice, contrasting with the anticipation of a scandal. "It's clear that their friendship is based on missionary work, nothing more," commented an older nun, her tone reflecting a mixture of relief at the lack of expected drama. Speculation about Sister Claire's pregnancy was beginning to wane, but the mystery of her condition still hung in the air. After all, her belly was huge. The confusion deepened when more footage was shown, showing the two of them in the convent garden, deeply involved in conversations about the missions and plans to help the less fortunate. "We need to think of more ways to bring hope to those poor families," said Sister Claire excitedly, full of ideas. The images showed no inappropriate behavior, just two friends dedicated to their faith and to serving others. The staff, even more confused, wondered how the rumors had strayed so far from reality. Nothing in the recordings indicated anything other than a friendship based on mutual respect and commitment to their spiritual calling. So, they ended up with more questions than answers, and the religious community was forced to confront the possibility that they had misjudged Sister Claire and Father John based only on assumptions and unfounded rumors. However, one thing was certain. The nun's belly kept growing, and even though it didn't prove that they weren't having an affair, it didn't explain her condition. And there were also their nocturnal encounters that the cameras couldn't capture what they were doing. For this reason, some still believed in the idea of pregnancy. As she couldn't stand the rumors or the size of her belly, Sister Claire also began to experience physical discomfort and acute pain. That's when she decided to undergo an ultrasound. The situation had reached a critical point, and the need for answers outweighed the fear and anxiety that had accompanied her since the beginning of this perplexing saga. At the hospital, while the doctors performed the procedure, there was an air of scientific curiosity mixed with incredulity. How did a nun achieve this feat? They commented to each other, perplexed by the atypical case in front of them. The doctors, with serious expressions, explained to Sister Claire and the others present that her condition was indeed intriguing because it didn't make any sense. So what really happened was that the exaggerated growth of her belly was the result of an infection and not a pregnancy, as many had assumed. The revelation came as a shock, both to Sister Claire and to everyone who was following her case. Believe it or not. But the truth was that the priest, returning from his trip to a poor village, had brought with him gifts that the locals had given him in the form of typical foods, a gesture of goodwill on their part. Unfortunately, unaware that the food was contaminated with a bacteria that causes ascites, the man happily shared the meal with the nun in the kitchen that day. The village they used to visit was a very poor place that lacked basic sanitation, which meant that many residents suffered from diseases caused by this misfortune. While the priest had fallen ill after eating, the effects on his body were brief and relatively mild. Sister Claire, on the other hand, having shared the same meal, was affected in a significantly more serious way, with the infection manifesting itself in the noticeable swelling of her belly. What we see here is an accumulation of fluid, typical in cases of ascites. This is caused by an infection and has nothing to do with pregnancy. You can rest assured, said one of the doctors, pointing to the images on the screen, which clearly showed abdominal distension without any sign of a fetus. The relief of Sister Claire and the nuns following her case was remarkable, mixed with a dose of indignation at having been so misunderstood and judged by those who were supposed to support her. You'll have to come back here more often so we can do the tests and start your medication, said the doctors. Treatment for the nun's condition began immediately with the expectation of a full recovery. Meanwhile, news of the true story of her growing belly began to spread, dispelling the rumors and restoring her reputation, as well as that of Father John. It had been an episode that served as a painful reminder of the danger of hasty judgments and the importance of seeking the truth before jumping to conclusions. And about the nun's night outs, what really happened was that she and the priest liked to help cold homeless people. But the sisters of the convent were against the nuns being on the streets after 10 p.m. The truth was that the two of them were really good friends. They had known each other since childhood and saw each other as real siblings. When Sister Claire finally recovered and crossed the convent gates after weeks of treatment and rest, she was greeted with a warm welcome. Flowers were placed in her room as a sign of welcome and redemption. One by one, the novice nuns approached to ask forgiveness for the misunderstanding. "Forgive us, sister. We will never tell things without having proof again," they said, their hugs conveying more than words could express. Father John, who remained by his friend's side throughout the process as a pillar of strength and support, found the adversity he faced a litmus test for his own faith and for the friendship that united them. Although a painful experience, the case of the nun who wasn't pregnant served to strengthen their resilience and understanding. Together, the friends continued to serve their community, now with a new perspective on the importance of non-judgment, compassion, and patience. Rumors and speculation gave way to an open dialogue about the importance of seeking the truth before forming opinions about the destructive power of unsubstantiated words and, most importantly, about the ability to forgive and move on. Sister Claire, with her health restored and her honor reclaimed, found in her ordinal renewed mission to promote empathy and understanding inside, binding bonds through beautiful tales. Thank you for watching.